Hello, everyone out there in the world of YouTube. You are back at the Music Den with, the usual suspects plus a guest who has graced us a few times before. Um, Armando, say hello to the kind people.
Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are doing great and having a great day and looking after yourselves and one another.
Ken, say hi.
Hi.
All right.
Good enough.
Don,
Good enough.
No one can say I can't, you know, obey
take an
commands.
order. That's good. Don Brightupt, how are you, sir?
Very well, Jim. Thanks. It's nice to see you guys again. Good to be back in the den.
Yeah, it's
Good to
always
have you
good to
back,
have
sir.
you here, especially to be kind of the jazz guru for us this morning. As we've been talking about doing a piano jazz trio episode for months and months and months, and I think just some back and forth between you and I, Don, was sort of like the final lightning rod. It's like, okay, let's do this, and um, I think we're all ready to kind of sit at your feet, as it were, and sort of understand why you've got these 10 albums that you've picked as sort of the creme de la creme of the world of piano and bass and drums. So, whatever color you want to add to that, whatever opening commentary, what have you, just launch us in, brother.
Well, it's a huge task we've set for ourselves today because there's just such a giant body of music that falls into this jazz piano trio category, and it has to be said that I want to put this caveat at the beginning because not all crucial, important small group piano jazz is in the form of a piano trio. I mean, there are, records like McCoy Tyner's The Real McCoy, um, or which has Joe Henderson on it on sax, or Herbie Hancock's albums from the '60s, which are quintet records with Freddie Hubbard and stuff. I mean, you can't necessarily boil all of piano jazz down to trio records, but there's a lot there to choose from, and there's actually there's so much to choose from that not only could you take the 10 albums I've picked and shuffle them and put them in any order and have that sort of be a pretty good top 10, but there are that by its very nature, this kind of discussion, it excludes a whole bunch of stuff and is a great argument starter. And by no means am I trying to disparage anything that's not on this list, because there are as many great piano trios as there are great piano players over the last 100 years. It would be kind of at this point. So
But again, this list is just your opinion. I mean, and
yeah, this is my opinion. I've tried to sort of
yeah,
walk the line between historical relevance and people who are sort of on the Mount Rushmore of jazz piano, and then my own personal tastes. Um, there are two pianists who are on this list twice, so they're clearly those are my
yes.
guys. And like I said, you could shuffle these 10, and I'd like the list just as much, whatever you ended up with. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to sort of count them down from 10 to 1 and just talk about each?
Do
Sure,
you,
sure,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I know you guys have sort of I gave you that little short list and gave you some key tracks to listen to and stuff. And I don't know, um Ken, maybe you're deep on this subject, or semi deep. Um,
Um, I would say that piano trio is probably my favorite format.
right,
Um, because I've said many times that as far as instruments, lead instrument piano is my favorite in jazz. So, I love and the piano and especially the bass, is just, and of course, if I add my love of the drums too, well, that about covers it. I'm not an expert as far as the history and the development and the breakdown, the analyzation. I'm just a huge fan. Um, I know, I think every one of these artists except for maybe one.
Mhm.
Um, your comment on the two artists here twice are two of my absolute favorites,
Yeah.
and uh, so expert, no. Huge fan, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an interesting format in that, you know, people picture jazz and immediately go to trumpet and sax.
Sure.
Right. So
Yeah.
this is kind of like uh, the center of the atom, the jazz atom, you know, piano,
Hmm.
bass, drums, and everything else is kind of circling around that. And part, you know, like a lot of things in music, there's a kind of technological slash economic reason for how prevalent it is because,
Yeah.
you know, it's cheaper to play with a trio than a quintet or a sextet.
Mhm.
And you know, you have all the harmonic information and low end and rhythmic information you need to sort of put a whole variety of music across with this combination of instruments. It's almost like the folk duo, you know,
Sure.
two people who could get on a bus with their guitars and go play. Well,
Right.
back in the day, there were decent pianos in every manner of club and saloon and bar, and you know, and so you could come in and sort of set up a piano trio gig relatively easily. My background on this music goes really deep because my dad was a jazz piano freak.
There
So
you go.
you know, growing up, I would have I'd be hearing even before I knew what it was, or sort of identified any favorites, or was really even giving it conscious thought. I was hearing Art Tatum and Dave Brubeck and you know, Bud Powell, Oscar Peterson, you know, on and on, Errol Gardner. Um, so this kind of music, this kind of swinging, um, minimal, standards based kind of jazz performance was all around me as a kid. You know, we that's what was playing on the cassette player in the car or on the hi-fi in the living room and that kind of thing. So uh, as with a lot of music lists, I find it hard to divorce my kind of childhood experience of
Yeah.
this music
Yeah.
uh, and try to be subjective about it. I mean objective about it. I can't be.
Hmm.
This is a lot of this music is just kind of in my DNA.
Was
Uh,
your dad a musician too?
he was not a pro, but he was a very good jazz piano player. Like
Okay.
he could play, you know, boogie woogie stride piano. He could read. He could improvise a little bit. He was the one who sort of sat down with me one day when I was hammering away on my terrible pseudo Elton John songs that I was writing in eighth and ninth grade, and it said,
Yeah.
"Here, you need to know some stuff," and showed me the circle of fifths and how to make the various chord colors and stuff
Right.
like that. So yeah,
Good.
I mean,
Good.
and I recognize that's not a typical sort of childhood experience,
Sounds
but
like a fantastic childhood experience to me.
yeah,
If I was
yeah,
able to do that, I mean,
it was amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
and I guess I thought, you know, as a kid, every household has all this different music playing in it at all times. Gradually, you realize, oh no, not every household is like that. And so, anyway, maybe that's a little too much biographical stuff. But the first album I have on this list, which probably wouldn't be at the center of a lot of the Jazz Police's repertoire of jazz trio records, is one called Fictionary, which was an album made in the 90s by Lyle Mays with just an acoustic trio. And I think people think of Lyle more as a sort of a, you know, a quarter of the Pat Metheny group, or half of that duo that did Wichita Falls and that kind of thing, and almost more uh, as a composer than an improviser sometimes, because his compositions were so great. But this album he made with Mark Johnson and Jack DeJohnette, who just died, so respect to Jack, is just a beautiful kind of back to basics fundamentals piano trio record. Almost in a way, Lyle saying, yeah, all you jazz purists who think I'm the fusion guy or the modern guy or the Americana guy, listen to this.
Sure.
And he just blows his brains out and swings like crazy and plays this really more traditional jazz repertoire. Well, what did you guys think of that record?
I thought it was a great surprise when it came out, and and I'm a huge Lyle Mays fan. And one thing that I love about his, he didn't do very many solo albums,
Right.
but man, they're very diverse and wonderful. And this is just this was just being familiar with his other works. It was mind blowing in a wonderful way for me. Jim.
Yeah, I'll echo what Ken said on that. It was very much sort of like a wow, this is unexpected, because usually you expect something that's like heavily arranged and orchestrated, because as much as he is a jazz guy, Lyle had a deep appreciation and love for classical music too. So that informed a lot of what he did. But yeah, this is just like it's just almost felt like a raw jam session, and the sensitivity and interplay with Johnson and DeJohnette is just absolutely crazy. I love this record. Yeah.
I would agree. This is, again, I've said this before we started taping, this is new territory for me. But I almost also found there's a bit of experimentation going on here, in a sense. So I like the fact that there were no limits with what they were going to do in the studio. So, and the fact that you had Pat Metheny and Steve Robney, Robbie, producing, I mean, that's like gold and platinum right there, and right there. So
Yeah.
it's good experience.
I mean, the interesting thing about a piano trio, or one of the interesting things, is always the conversation, right? I mean, ideally you're aware of three personalities communicating, and that's certainly the case on this record. Like you feel people reacting to each other in real time, and kind of working on the same story. And you three, as a trio of podcasters, should understand that dynamic very well.
I think we do.
Inelegantly.
I think we do. We try to, anyways. But
Don, do I remember correctly? In at least one interview, Mays says that he doesn't listen to a lot of jazz.
Yeah, that's interesting, and not completely surprising, like, because you hear so much kind of, as Jim observed, classical influence in his stuff and folk influence.
Yes.
And certainly he was schooled as a jazz musician, in his early days. But like a lot of people, it's interesting how many people, like Keith Jarrett was another one who sort of stopped listening to other people, as a habit, because I think he kind of untethered himself from the larger jazz world and just said, I'm going to pursue my thing, and almost like the less interference I have from without, the better, and you'll get a more uncut Keith Jarrett experience if I just stop paying attention to Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock and all my contemporaries.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
okay.
Having said that about contemporaries, the track I picked on this Fictionary, on this Lyle record, is the one called Bill Evans, which of course, if you know Wichita Falls, Pat and Lyle did this tribute to Bill Evans called September 15th, which is really one of the most beautiful pieces of music in any genre
Ever. Yeah.
ever. I mean, so interesting that he would just hit it right on the nose and call the song Bill Evans. But you hear in the composition some very deliberate kind of left-hand piano voicings that are meant to say, that here's Bill Evans' thing. Here's me doing Bill Evans' thing. And it's very the improvisation is very kind of almost respectful and kind of bowing at the feet of the master. Like it's not, he never overplays, and he's just kind of floating on this pillow of amazing harmony that he's put together, which is very much the Bill Evans methodology as well.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I love about this list in general
Yeah.
is overall listening to these, it's fairly easy to hear and differentiate the different styles
Right.
of each of the artists.
I would consider the list a little eclectic because you go from contemporary jazz to classic jazz to experimental for me in terms of,
Well, what's
at least
funny is that
a couple of
I
the
think
albums.
I think there's a lot of modern jazz trio stuff which really would epitomize experimental, which, hasn't made this list. The EST comes to mind. And some of the stuff from the Bad Plus. I mean, that would be probably more on the bleeding edge of jazz here and there.
Yeah, or Medeski, Martin, and Wood.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And, I kind of had to draw the line somewhere. I could have, put together a pretty good list of just stuff from before 1959.
Sure.
It would still be a good list, or after 59 or whatever, So I just tried to kind of have a bit of everything and have some of the big names represented.
No, this list is to me, it's quite diverse.
Good balance, yeah.
Well, one of the at number 9 we have a real jazz trio traditionalist named Bill Charlap, who's in my opinion maybe the foremost purveyor of the kind of jazz trio music that you could plug into almost any era. This record of his that I'm about to mention sounds like, apart from the recording, maybe the recording technology, you could sell it to someone as something that was recorded in the 50s, 60s, 70s, anything.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is a devotee of Bill Evans for sure, but Oscar Peterson in a big way. I know him a very little bit, and because my brother knows him in New York, and we went to hear his trio, this very trio, at the Vanguard one night, and I had this great exchange with him, which was he came off after the first set and came and sat down with us. And at the Vanguard, right over the piano, there's a huge portrait of Bill Evans. And I said, how does it feel having Bill Evans looking over your shoulder? And he said, Bill Evans is always looking over my shoulder.
Nice.
But anyway, he works with a bass player named Peter Washington and a drummer named Kenny Washington. No relation in the two Washingtons there. Although it's been the source of some confusion over the years with reviewers who, assume that they're brothers or cousins or something. But probably one of, I can't say my most amazing live experience, but I saw this trio, and I think it was on the tour for this record. They came up to Toronto and played a club called Top of the Senator, which is not there anymore. Yeah, but you might know where it is, Armando. It's kind of on Victoria Street, behind a bunch of the theaters on Yonge Street. And
okay.
at the front of that club, it was a long, long room upstairs where the jazz went on. And right beside the stage, there was one little L at the end. And there was a little alcove there with a table for two. And so whenever I was going to hear a piano gig, I would make sure that I got that table, because you ended up, even if I was by myself, because you would end up sitting 3 feet behind the piano player looking over his shoulder,
Good
and
Lord.
hearing the piano fully acoustically into this little kind of listening booth that you were sitting in, which was, fantastic. So the album in question is Notes from New York, and it was recorded in 2016. But you could almost drop the needle in anything that this trio has recorded, and get that same kind of traditionalist, hard swinging vibe, but
Yeah.
very economical. Outside of Oscar Peterson, maybe Charlap to me is the foremost kind of arranger for piano trio. He's does very specific intros. He'll finish the head of a song, and before the improvising starts, he'll do a little written interlude that clearly the whole trio has kind of rehearsed. And on I'll Remember April, which is the sort of focus track that I picked from this record, he starts a little ostinato thing in the left hand, and he starts doing this little rhythmic pattern of fives in the right hand, and the band kind of skates in, and he does kind of about 4 different treatments of this standard I'll Remember April, kind of chord locked hand, 2-hand chord melody type stuff, and all different kind of versions of the melody before he even starts soloing. Then he starts soloing and does this little thing, which I hadn't even tweaked to until this week, where his first chorus on that song, instead of playing right hand improvised melody and left hand chords, he's playing right hand single note improvised melody and just single notes in the left hand. So he'll just be blowing and pecking out a little, there's a chord tone, oh, there's a third, there's the root, just very, very quickly, which is sort of an odd way of doing it. Like, that's a mental decision to say, yeah, you don't get any chords yet. You just get these little, chirps out of the left hand as I sort of think fluidly with my right hand. But anyway, that track I picked because it's like a kind of précis of everything that this trio is good at in about 4 minutes or something.
Well, I was just going to say, this is my take on this album. Listening to it, it just seems like that each track took like 1 or 2 takes to get down, and that was it. Like, very loose, very in the moment, and just, don't overplay something. Just get the feeling of the track down and just move on to the next. That's my view of it, but
Yeah, I would
I
say,
like the album. Yeah.
yeah, those 3 are what they call a working trio. Like, it's not just a kind of, let's get 3 good musicians together, put them in the studio, and then the whole thing is kind of a fact-finding mission. This
Yeah.
is like 3 men who are fully inside each other's heads musically. So you could probably walk them into a studio and put down 8 or 10 lead sheets and get a wildly kind of ESP kind of performance from this trio.
Sure.
They're just so used to each other, and they're so used to the kind of shared language that they've created, and swinging their asses off, I must say.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It was amazing.
Definitely.
This was the first Charlap album that I'd heard. I've heard about Bill Charlap for years, but never really sort of dove in. I don't know if I had some sort of bias thinking it would be, like Bobby Short without the vocals, which,
Right.
Bobby Short is great. I've seen him live, but man, I was just so impressed at the the breadth and the depth of the playing on each of the tunes. It was this makes me want to check out more. Which what would you recommend as a next stop in the Charlap
Well, actually,
Yep.
what I would recommend is this is maybe my favorite record of theirs. You could sort of go forward
Yep.
by individual years or backward by individual years from around 2016, around 10 years ago, and not hit anything you didn't like for a long time. I mean,
Cool.
yeah,
It's
and
interesting.
the breadth of the knowledge in that group. I mean, if there's a gripe with that trio from critics, it's probably that traditionalist streak, because the critics are
Hmm.
always looking for, um, who's on the vanguard, who's on the cutting edge,
Exactly.
which doesn't necessarily incline them to give great reviews to stuff that's more about consolidating or looking backward or,
Sure.
um, you know, weaving new strands into an existing tradition. That's critics love people who break the mold.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, true enough.
Cool.
At the risk of just blah blahing, do you want me to go on to number 8?
Sure,
Uh,
sure. The floor is yours.
I have Ahmad Jamal in this position, a very popular and significant album of his called "The Awakening" from 1970, and this, interestingly, from 1970, it's almost like you hear something from that date and you think you're going to be in early Herbie Hancock electric stuff
CTI world.
or CTI, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, or Weather Report or Bitches Brew or something.
Yeah.
And by contrast, this is a very traditional, by comparison, piano trio record. But lest you think that it's tame or insignificant, you should know that Ahmad Jamal was frequently cited by Miles Davis as his main musical influence.
Yep.
So the way he's voicing chords and using space has everything to do with the way Miles heard small group jazz, at least through the 60s. There's I have him on my key track here from this record playing Dolphin Dance, which was my way of getting Herbie Hancock into the discussion, even though he didn't have trios, because that's a beautiful Herbie tune from one of his 60s records. And I think it's on Maiden Voyage.
I think so.
Yeah, but interestingly, there's sort of less of the traditional division of labor, the way he plays that song. Like normally the piano trio format is maybe there's an intro, maybe not. The trio plays the 32 bar head usually. Sometimes there's a break and the blowing starts and people start handing the baton around and taking their solos, and the drummer takes his 4s or his 8s or whatever. But the way Ahmad Jamal treats Dolphin Dance is more like, I'm going to wade in here and take my time, state the melody, and then instead of starting cold with improvised information, I'm going to now restate the melody with some decoration
Mhm.
and stuff that kind of goes across the bar line and start to mess with the shape of the melody, maybe a little bit rhythmically, or add a little extra depth harmonically. But it's not like, they're waltzing along, they stop, and he just starts ripping,
Blowing.
even though he's perfectly capable of that. Like, I mean, he chops wise and swing wise, he was as good as anybody playing at that point. But this record in general and that track in particular, to me, are just great examples of, we're good musicians, we're playing a really good song, we don't have to mess with it too much. Here it is again from a 15-degree different angle, and here it is from above, and now we're taking it out. But there's always a lot of just kind of space and listening going on.
Mm-hmm.
So did you guys know Ahmad Jamal's stuff at all?
I
I
did.
didn't.
I did. I was familiar with the trio work that he did around the late 50s and early 60s with Crosby and Fournier. And I was actually
Yeah.
kind of surprised that, as my understanding is that that trio is held in pretty high regard. And I was wondering what it was about The Awakening for you that sort of led you to slot that in as opposed to like any of the Pershing sets that
Yeah,
Jamal
that's a
did.
fair question because particularly they have that the earlier group that you're talking about has some amazing live records from that period. Um, and probably I just have to cop to this. This is the record of his that I heard in my dad's
First.
record collection. You know,
That's
so it's
awesome.
kind of it's a little more under my skin than that other group.
Hmm.
You know, with any trio with Jamal at the center of it was going to be great. It's sort of like, you know, everybody talks about the Bill Evans early 60s trio. Um, I think I liked both of his later groups just as much personally. Um, so, you know, it's just a matter of taste. I really do like Jamil Nasser on bass, though. He seems to just have that magic touch of he's out of the way when he needs to be out of the way.
Yeah,
But when there's a hole and you hear something from him, it's just gold every time. You
hmm,
know, it almost sounds like something that was edited together at times because there's so much beautiful interplay and nothing's in anything's way. But I know for a fact, you know, back then, piano trio records were done in a day or maybe 2 days.
sure.
If
This
you
that's what I've noticed with this list is that a lot of
yeah,
these albums, or good, practically all these albums, were recorded in like 2 days maximum or 3 days at the most. It's just like this is amazing. And my last comment is that there's a lot of attention put on the bass in terms of these compositions.
yeah,
The bass is up front in the mix, which I like that quite a bit. It adds to me, that's a real a different dimension to the music overall.
Hmm.
When you're listening to it, you appreciate the bass even more, or I do, I should say. So, to my novice ear, sorry, I mean, just for this kind of
no,
music.
that's true. And I mean, and part of that is just when there are only three musicians, everybody's a little untethered and they have some freedom to
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
dive in. And if you're the bass player, you don't have to just walk the whole time or just play roots of chords. You can, you know,
yeah,
really, you know,
Yeah.
be a kind of equal partner in the
yeah.
sound.
There's more expression in the bass playing
Right.
Yeah.
on these
What about
albums.
you, Ken? Did you know Ahmad Jamal very well?
Moderately. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely know the name. I've listened to him in the past. Um, um, Not usually entire albums, but within various lists and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree with you, especially with Nasser on bass. It really jumps out at me in such a great way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now we move toward the modern with number 7, which is inevitably Chick Corea was going to be on this list. Although my favorite Chick Corea record is one from I think it's 81, might be 82, called Three Quartets.
Yeah.
But that's a quartet record. That's him, Eddie Gomez, Steve Gadd, and Michael Brecker. And
Oh, powerful.
yeah, I mean, yeah, a bunch of bums, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
but I mean the compositions on that record and the blowing and the kind of individuality of that one, you know, I can't recommend that highly enough. But the obvious trio record for Chick is from 1968 when he had sort of had a cup of coffee with Miles Davis and was kind of coming on the scene. He made a great record with Stan Getz around that time. But his trio with Miroslav Vitus and Roy Haynes was sort of the trio that people still to this day think of as the kind of Chick's acoustic trio. And Roy Haynes just died, I think, last year
Yes.
too. So
Mm.
some of these Mount Rushmore living legend drummers are exiting the planet, as we watch. Um, but if you listen through Charlap and Ahmad Jamal, and then you hit Chick Corea, you immediately know that you're into another level of sort of modernity,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean, even the composition Matrix, which is the one I picked out from this record, uh, is angular, surprising, 100% unpredictable, not paint by number, not poured into a sort of a mold that is, 8 bars of this, 8 bars of this, a bridge, 8 more bars, any of that stuff. He's taking the jazz piano tradition and, you know, he's off into the future.
Well, he's basically turned it on its ear, basically, with this album, like, or turned it on its head. Because to me, this is one of, just not to cut you off, I apologize,
Yeah,
but
go
this
ahead.
is one of the most experimental albums in the list that you put on the list. So it's like, I'm listening to this album and it's like, what the hell? I go, oh my goodness. Like, but in a good way. So, but
Yeah,
please
I mean, the
continue.
thing I would draw your attention to with Chick, all throughout his career, but almost starting with this record, is how deliberate everything is, how much intentionality there is in every single line. And he'll do things like he'll be ripping up in a little right-hand line that sounds fully improvised, and then at the end of the phrase, he'll do a little thing where he hits 2 octaves, or he ends on an odd interval or 3 note chord and just holds it for a second. And he plays, in other words, to me, like a composer. Like everything, there's no kind of spinning along, playing licks, any of that. It's all fully harvested from his musical insides, uh, in the way that a composer or an arranger would do it. There's
Hmm.
a motif happens, and the motif is developed. The motif goes one direction, then goes the other direction, then double times, and all that kind of almost classical composer kind of approach to jazz. Now, the knock on Chick, even on that record I was talking about on Three Quartets, is that he didn't swing, and to me,
Huh.
that's off base. I think he just has there's a little bit of a different math to his swing. It's not quite as close to a kind of triplet swing,
Yeah.
as a lot of people would be. And the magic almost of that Three Quartets record is that he found Eddie Gomez and Steve Gadd, two people who were feeling the jazz, feeling the swing the way he feels it. So that it's got this kind of angular, half straightened out kind of vibe to it. And I think the roots of that are really audible on this record too, which is, if I haven't said the title yet, Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. I had a friend who was a sax player and decided he wanted to do a gig as a singer, and he titled it Now I Sing, Now You Sob.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Anyway,
Lovely.
curious whether you guys knew this record in advance, or it's
I had
been.
no idea. I had
No?
no
Yeah.
idea, but I'm a babe in the woods with this stuff. I'm telling you right now. So, but I
Yeah,
was,
this is probably the earliest Chick Corea I've ever listened to. I'm familiar with more of his later stuff. And I'll be honest, there's been many times that as a non-pianist and non-jazz expert, I can find him a little bit challenging sometimes. And so this really does prompt me to go back and visit his earlier stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
He
think
sings a bit ahead of his time.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and right to his death, I think he was in that category, ahead of his time. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and you can certainly find stuff where he's in a little bit more of a traditional bag when he's playing on someone else's record, or something like that,
Yeah.
you know. and is kind of fitting what he does to the needs of another leader. But when he's kind of off the leash, it's always surprising and challenging.
Well, for me, I'd never heard this album before. I've known of Chick Corea with his work with Return to Forever,
Right.
and some of his later solo stuff, but not this early release. But I like it. It's experimental. It's the most experimental album on the list. And for me, when I hear this album, I've always said, I said before, the rules are there are no rules in terms of what you're gonna write and record. So I mean, this album fits that model
Yeah, I would
to a
say that's
T,
to an
to a T.
extent, although I wouldn't call it free jazz. Like it's not all the way,
Well,
Right.
yeah,
but it's certainly not taking anything for granted.
yeah,
Yeah.
They're the guardrails are kind of not there. This
yeah,
is
yeah.
this is what a trio can do now, he's sort of saying, as opposed to,
Right.
this is not your dad's piano trio kind
No,
of.
no, 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 definitely not. So,
This is not Nat King Cole.
but that's a
Um,
good thing. That's a good thing.
Right.
I think this record of we didn't listen to them in the order that you laid out here, but to me
Yeah.
this was the one that was like most distinctive right out of the gate that sounded like, okay, this is doing something much different than
Yeah.
what the other guys have done. I've got a question and then a comment to throw out there. Right now, the version of Now He Sings and Now He Sobs that's sort of in the universe is kind of actually a twofer. It's a combination of the original 68 album and this other one from 75, I think called Circling In, which has
Yeah.
a lot of the shorter tunes. I think Windows is one of the ones on there, a couple of Chick standards. What's your preference? Does having the twofer sort of ruin the original beauty of the 68 release or
Well, it didn't for me because I was already so dug in with my vinyl of this record that it's never, even when you add stuff to it, it's still in my head. There's still the nugget that is the
Mhm.
original. And I'm of two minds about the kind of like when CD technology enabled everybody to put their alternate takes and bonus tracks and stuff
Mhm.
on records. Like I don't, if it's kind of blue and you're putting out a CD of it, I don't know if I want to hear that they played three standards that day to get warmed up. Like I just want to hear the statement, the record,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
Having said that, if you're really inside something and it's really on your favorites list, then it's sort of fun to hear like, okay, well, the take I like and not think of as the real version of it was take three. Let's hear the other two takes and
Yeah.
kind of see how they got there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mhm.
you had a question, or that was the question?
That was the question.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I just wanted to say about Chick is that um I was more familiar with his kind of final trio, which was he and Christian McBride and Brian Blade, who
Yeah.
again have this intense interplay with one another. I wish I had the chance to see them live. But the one set that I wanted to recommend for folks is actually a Chick Corea box set called Five Trios, which is
Thanks,
actually a
Jim.
six CD set, and it's as advertised. The bass playing includes Christian McBride, Eddie Gomez, John Patitucci, um, Jack DeJohnette, Jeff Ballard, Antonio Sanchez. I mean, there's other guys, on bass and drums throughout this, but it's an absolutely astounding set. And it's one of these things that I think is in and out of print. And I think Chick Corea Productions found a stash of them. And so it's still available to get, but probably not for long. It's an outstanding
Okay, I
box.
I need to go find that.
What's it called again, Jim?
It's called Five Trios.
Oh Lord. Okay. Here I come, Amazon.
chickcorea.com.
Yeah. Yep. Here I come,
Yeah,
Amazon.
I never saw Chick live to my great disappointment. I sort of had near misses with him, and a couple of times I had tickets for things and then got a gig and thought, well, I don't want it to cost me an extra $500 to go to this concert, so didn't go. But I wish I had now. Um, yeah, Patitucci and Brian Blade I saw with Herbie
Oh,
in a quintet. That is actually a live. The night that I saw is actually a live record. It's called Directors
oh,
in Music,
yeah,
and
with Brecker.
yeah, with Brecker and Roy Hargrove. It's a quintet
Yeah.
record, and it was one of those nights I was with my buddy who's a guitar player, and I said to him, "God, I hope somebody's recording this." And it turned out the CBC, the national broadcaster, had recorded it, and at some point, Herbie heard their tape of that night, and he said, "Oh, this is the record. Let's put this out."
Did you
So
say CBC recorded it?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it was at Massey Hall, and they just
Ooh, good
set
venue.
up. Yeah, I think they did a like a simulcast of it
Yeah.
to the radio, and then
Okay.
that ended up being the live record. But yeah, I mean, in terms of people with their own voice in the rhythm section and people who are just astounding listener responder type musicians, Brian Blade and John Patitucci, you cannot get better than those guys.
Yeah.
I feel like unless we want to go 5 or 6 hours, I should keep going with the list.
Sure.
Continue, please, sir.
Armando is a
Okay,
master at editing, so
right.
Oh, I am.
Okay, so all my speeches would be like, what,
No, 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 no. You at least get one or two words in, then we move on. There we go.
So at number 6, I have, got to do it as a Canadian. I have Oscar Peterson, and maybe his best regarded studio album, which is Night Train from 1959. And with his longtime trio of Ray Brown on bass and Ed Thigpen on drums. And this is often cited as a jazz piano player's kind of introduction to the form. Like, this is, here's what 3 people can do in terms of sort of groove and momentum and studio arranging for a small group, and taking a bunch of standards and waking them up, just sort of breathing new life into them. So Night Train, which is a blues, sort of an R&B blues song originally, is sort of the reason they called the record that, is they're pointing you to the fact that it's really a blues-based jazz record, So you've got compositions by a lot of, well-known giant composers. In the case of C Jam Blues, I'm pretty sure that's Duke Ellington, but
yeah. Duke's Place is how I first heard it.
right, yeah. But that's, if you want a quick way into this record, that track C Jam Blues is just, you have never heard 3 people in your life swinging like this. Once they get through the head, they do this thing where Oscar takes these 4-bar breaks at the top of each blues chorus, just him, and you can just feel this powerful swinging pulse going through as he just does these right hand breaks, and then the band kicks in, and it's just, to me, it gives me like the buzz that a heavy metal fan gets from heavy metal. I get at those moments.
That's a hell of a buzz. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Like, and so there's, I think, 3 choruses, might even be 4 choruses that start with these breaks, and then the band comes in for the rest of the 12-bar blues, and then finally they just keep rocketing through, and there are no more breaks. And I swear to God that, like, I mean, my feet leave the ground when I hear that. And it's not the only one like that on this record either. There's super up-tempo ones, and then some super swampy, greasy, bluesy ones as well. So again, I asked, how well did you guys know this record?
Babe in the Woods.
I knew this one. Actually, there's a funny story behind this one. I was introduced to this in college, and I was introduced to this by a friend of mine who I had turned her on to jazz, to actually the Bill Evans recording, one of them we're going to talk about.
Yep.
And all of a sudden she shows up one day and has, this Oscar Peterson. And I'm like, who in the heck is Oscar Peterson? What are you doing eclipsing my knowledge of jazz, young lady? And I
Right.
heard it. I'm like, dang, this is amazing. So I got schooled by a jazz newbie friend of mine, and I'm glad I got schooled. This is an amazing record.
Well,
Yeah. Again, thanks to my dad, I got to see him live a bunch.
Mm,
I was growing up, like between, I don't know, age 8 and 18 or whatever. I, got at first dragged out to Oscar Peterson shows, and then later was looking forward to them.
yeah,
That was a later group of his, usually a quartet. He used to do gigs with the guitar player Joe Pass
yeah.
in his later years. But man, oh man, the pride of Verdun, Quebec, which is now part of Montreal, got to wave that Canadian flag for Oscar. It's his 100th birthday this year too, as well.
Okay.
For all these events going on up here anyway, around the centenary of
Really? See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, fantastic album. And I'm just gonna say, with Jim saying he learned from a newbie. I've always said, when you think you know all there is to know about music, there's always something new to learn, right? So,
Oh yeah.
oh yeah. So there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it
better
was
than
Oscar Peterson that really turned me into Ray Brown. Turned me
Yes.
on to Ray Brown.
Yeah. I mean,
The first jazz bass player I ever learned about. Incredible. I love him.
Okay.
yeah, like you want to talk about just steady, logical, beautiful, swinging, inevitable sounding
Yeah.
bass playing.
Yeah.
That's him. And I would put also in that category from roughly the same period, Paul Chambers, from Miles's groups
Yep.
and Wynton Kelly's groups too. Shout out to Wynton Kelly, who's also not on this list of top 10, but I mean, probably should be.
Yeah.
I was just wondering how far this list could have gone in terms of number of albums to put on. It's like, okay, this could have been a 2-part or 3-part episode,
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
It's like,
Yeah, well, I mean, especially when we get into the next group of musicians that we're going to talk about, each one of them has maybe between 10 and 20 core albums for me,
Sure.
okay.
But I'm a nerd, so
Yes, we
This
are
is your
too.
livelihood.
well, that's right. That's why we're here. We're nerds.
There you go. We're all nerds.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so in the category of where do I begin and how do you choose just one record, I have Keith Jarrett's Still Live, which is a 1986 record, with his great trio with Gary Peacock on bass and again Jack DeJohnette on drums. And that trio worked as a unit for a lot of years, and just set about themselves the task of, let's play basically the whole jazz/standards repertoire and do our thing with it. You would almost pick up Keith's new album and look at the song list, and it would be I Fall in Love Too Easily, Autumn Leaves, Nearness of You, or whatever, and it would almost look like, well, is this going to be like Nat King Cole with strings, or what's the deal here? But what was actually on the record was never traditional, never slavish,
Oh, no.
never thinking, well, this is how this song has to be played. The reason my recommended track from this one is Autumn Leaves is because that's probably, one of the most common entry level, everybody knows it without a lead sheet kind of jazz standards, that you take in your first piano lesson or guitar lesson or whatever. But what Keith does with it, even before he starts improvising, he's playing the head, and he's playing with it rhythmically so much that it's almost like this, the bass and drums are laying it down, and then Keith is just floating the melodic phrases atop this rhythmic bed. And some of them are extended and some of them are contracted and some of them are shifted to a different position in terms of where they start and where they end. And it's just like Herbie, you feel his rhythmic concept so strongly, even when he's just stating a melody. Forget about when he's blowing. I mean, it's ridiculous. But then you get into the solos on these standards with Keith, and sometimes sometimes the songs are 10 or 12 minutes long because he's just out there in the ether exploring, finding the possibilities in the song. And probably if you dropped the needle in the middle of any of those solos, it might take even an experienced jazz player, one time around the horn to even go, I think that might be Autumn Leaves, or is it Stella by Starlight, or Mr. PC, whatever, like you just don't know almost what you're listening to because Keith has taken it to this level and then to this and to this. And the beauty of this trio is that you cannot possibly challenge or surprise Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette enough. Like they'll just, they feel something strange coming at them in terms of a rhythmic pattern or a reharmonization or something, and they go, oh yeah, but what about this? And that's the conversation I'm talking about in a piano trio. Like you absolutely hear people challenging each other, reminding each other of a great thing, making the other person laugh, making the other person nostalgic or pensive or melancholy, and it's ideally it's like three friends after slightly too much wine, talking over each other and just spontaneously kind of entertaining each other.
Well, you kind of feed off each other's energy that you're getting out.
That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And each of them has this level of vocabulary and knowledge and just facility that just makes it this thing where you can do a 18-minute improvisation on Autumn Leaves and it never gets boring because there's all kinds of dynamics and things that going on that shift the tune around. Do you know, Don, would they even have a set list, or is it really just off the top of Keith's head and Gary and Jack have to follow?
I've wondered the very same thing. They
Okay.
tend to, I can say, when they play a song, a standard, they tend to play it in the regular key,
Mm-hmm.
in the kind of real book or best known key for the song, which suggests to me that he could easily be just saying, let's do this one now.
Mm-hmm.
And someone starts it, he starts it, or Jack, counts it off or whatever, and then they just dive in. But I don't know that for a fact. Certainly those three were all capable of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know a couple other things about this. We actually talked about a album from this trio a while ago, when we did sort of this, hey guys, here's records that I love, and you should check this out. And we listened to My Foolish Heart, which is the album that's got the trio doing like Ain't Misbehavin' and Honeysuckle Rose, which were just like complete left turns, that
Right.
Keith would go there, but of course he swung the crap out of it, and it's just these two amazing recordings. By my count, and my count may be off because I was looking at Wikipedia, there's like 22 albums that this trio have been released, whether it's studio or live. If someone really loves still live, what do you recommend as like a next step?
Well, again, I would go, Still Live is 86. I would go from there forward in increments or backward in increments.
Mm-hmm.
actually backward might be the most interesting because you could sort of hear the growth of the trio and the degree to which they get in each other's head over the years. Before we leave the subject of Keith, and Ken, you haven't weighed in there yet, but I wanted to say that you can hear on this record Keith doing his thing where he's kind of semi-singing the phrases that he's playing, that kind of it varies from record to record how much of that you can hear.
Yeah,
I heard that.
feel like if they mic the piano and then shut the lid,
That's right.
you're a little safer from it. But if you have the short stick open, then you hear him going.
Truth be told, that was one of the more irritating parts of the album for me because I'm like, I want to hear the music. I don't want to hear someone trying to go to the bathroom or
Right.
struggling to
No,
go to the
I mean,
bathroom.
it's a big knock on him. I know
I'm
with some
sorry.
people, and it's not that it's not distracting. I mean, I still notice it, of course, but Oscar Peterson used to do the same thing sometimes. When you'd see him live, he'd be singing everything he was playing. The difference is Oscar Peterson was a really good singer. Like he could sound like Nat King Cole. Like I mean, he really could sing. So at least
Oh,
if he was singing the phrase that he was playing down the octave, at least it was the same notes. Whereas Keith, it's a little
irritating.
Yeah.
yeah.
The other knock on Keith from some people is that he was kind of stuffy or intellectual or heady, and he famously, if someone coughed in the audience, he would want to go up and strangle the person, and was known to like pause performances and tell some lady, when you're done with your sniffles, I will resume playing, that kind of thing. But the contrary to that, in these records with this trio, especially the live ones, the level of sort of unbridled joy / freedom in this music is just astounding. It does not sound like an intellectual exercise at all. It sounds like somebody just, running through an open field, metaphorically,
Basically getting lost in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
One of their albums, I do want to throw a call out there as sort of a cautionary tale. We're all big Matheny fans here, and so we sort of know that you have like the standard Matheny book, and then you have Zero Tolerance for Silence.
Oh God.
Well,
yeah.
for the Keith Jarrett world, you have all these awesome standards albums, and then you have Never Let Me Go, which is a double live, which almost sounds like free jazz throughout, and it's some really challenging listening. So I would recommend for newbies to tiptoe their way into that one.
Yes, that's good advice. Yeah. And I mean, when someone's an artist on the level of Pat Metheny or Keith Jarrett, you can, they get to do whatever they want.
Yep.
They get to take whatever excursions they want.
Sure.
And, our opinion almost doesn't matter, but there's definitely, there are not just that record, but there are a few Keith records that are a little bit kind of defying you to like them.
Yes.
Almost in a way, like, here's what I'm up to now,
That's right.
Catch me if you can.
Like it. Tough luck.
Exactly.
Well, and that's why I haven't listened to a lot of Jarrett.
Yeah.
Sure.
Some of my early exposure was the Way Out stuff, and it's just like,
Right. Well, in that case, I'm doubling down on recommending these trio records from the 80s and 90s and 2000s with this group. It was a long running group because the fun thing is that if you have a little bit of experience with jazz, you'll know the tunes.
Sure.
So at least you have a way into every track. You have a way in because there's some melody or some form in the chord changes that you will feel like you've heard it before.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, imagine what he'd be like on stage with people with cell phones now.
Oh man.
Would he even get through a song?
Well, no, I mean he'd be I'm sure collecting people's cell phones in a bag and
Yeah.
giving it
Yep.
back at the end of the
Yeah,
performance.
they would have a disclaimer, no cell phones during
Yeah.
this performance, but
Yeah, but they do it anyway.
And that would be enforced by snipers who were in the balcony.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
number 4, you knew this was going to be on here somewhere. Sunday at the Village Vanguard,
Yes.
1961, Bill Evans record with his unfortunately, tragically short-lived classic trio, Scott LaFaro on bass and Paul Motian on drums. Some people say Paul Motion. I've never been sure which it is, but Scott LaFaro, his young compatriot, extraordinary bass player, would have been one of the all-time giants had he lived. Got killed in a car accident within a year of this album being made, which was a shock to his audience, but also a shock to Bill Evans that he took a while to bounce back from.
That's right.
Yep.
Because he didn't think that he would ever be sort of able to have that kind of intimate conversation with another bass player again.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
the track I picked off this one was Solar, which is I don't think Miles wrote that song. I think it's one of those songs that's kind of identified with Miles Davis, and Miles might have insinuated himself into the copyright at some point.
Yeah.
Blue and green. Blue.
Yeah, blue and green, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's a great head, and the reason I put it in there is that unlike a lot of the music on those 2 Vanguard records that this trio made, it's a little bit of a more modern, of the time kind of song.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's also the requisite number of standards on there too. But this, I would think, Armando, this is not scary piano trio music. This is just
No, I wanted to point something out.
beautiful, inevitable swinging. Oh yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, I picked this up after listening to Gloria Step. So
Yeah.
the full recordings of the Village at the Sunday at the Village Vanguard.
yeah. And there was a second album, full album, harvested from the same weekend at the
Waltz for Debbie.
Waltz for Debbie.
Yeah, and Waltz for Debbie is in this collection. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to pick this up, I want to thank a seller from Amazon from Mississauga, Ontario, sending me this. This was
Mississauga, Ontario, where I'm sitting right now.
There you go. There you go. $47.99.
I'll give you a view. Oh, you can't see it because of my background blurring.
There you go.
I put up my Christmas tree yesterday.
Okay. Did you put it up with some Vince Guaraldi?
Of course. What else?
There you go. Thank you.
And my other core Christmas record is the Kenny Burrell, Have Yourself a Soulful Little Christmas. Highly recommend.
Ooh, yes.
Sorry about that, though, Don. Please continue with.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you don't know Bill Evans at all, and that may not be true of any of us or many of us, this record is a great place to start because it's a kind of, you're joining this trio when they haven't been together that long, but they're fully in the zone as a unit, communication wise and dynamics wise and blowing and every other category of, piano trio greatness. And the distinctive thing with Bill Evans, the first thing that people go to is his kind of so-called left-hand concept, where he's got these very close-voiced, clustery sounding left-hand voicings with a lot of tension in them. Whereas the traditional jazz piano approach is to kind of be just almost percussively stabbing out thirds and sevenths and just fundamental chord tones in the left hand, and letting the right hand hit all that exotic stuff, the tensions and the outside the key stuff and all that. Bill Evans took that in a way that Brad Meldau later would very much as well. That kind of left hand, right hand, that kind of dotted line between left hand, right hand was over for him. Like you know, these are my digits, these are my extremities. I'm not, giving one job description to one hand and another job description to the other hand. Like I'm just spelling beautiful music, regardless of that. So, the thing that piano students study first about Bill Evans is that kind of left hand. Wow, he's not just playing the third and the seventh; he's got the 11th and the ninth and the 13th, and it's all within this little kind of 4 or 5 inch space on the piano.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the signature of him as a piano player.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a question related to this trio.
Yep.
One of the things that sort of stood out to me, again, I'm not a player, but I'm a listener. LaFaro's playing is just like never around the standard like root chords of things. He's just very playful in how he's working with Bill and with Paul Modian on things. Was this the first trio to kind of play so interdependently?
Interesting question.
Yeah, 1961. I mean, I can't think of much in the way of precedent for that trio in that year, because a lot of it was more the traditional, the bass and drums are just kind of a pulse, and the piano player. As you observed, LaFaro was just off the leash. Like even in Solar, in this tune I picked out, he's kind of blowing almost in the statement of the melody. Like he's very up the neck and very prominent and kind of not competing, but vying for your attention right at the front of, the statement by the band. And I always thought that the first time Bill found another bass player who kind of had that edgy, bright, up the neck, free kind of concept was when he started playing with Eddie Gomez.
Yep.
Who really does have a very related sound to LaFaro, and then, went off even further with it. But I feel like that's Bill Evans's comfort zone. Like he wants somebody to be, fully occupying, fully taking advantage of their third of the pie in the track. He's not looking for, I want thump, thump, thump accompaniment, So
Well, and it fits in well with what you're talking about, Evans's left hand,
right.
because the bass doesn't really need to establish chords and keys and whatever. He's like the John Entwistle of jazz. He just goes off
That's
and does his own
interesting.
thing, and that's one thing I love about about trios. You can focus in on any of the three instruments.
Yeah, that's right.
They're exposed, and
there's nowhere to hide.
And you got to be good to be that exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you just said, Jim, is the downside of when you're playing in a trio and, maybe you're not that familiar with the tune or whatever. There's nowhere to hide.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, anything from Bill Evans from this period is fantastic. And worth mentioning that he formed this trio right after his personal fame had gone to another level as a member of Miles Davis's band in the late 50s, right? There were probably a lot of people who didn't know who this bookish looking white dude with the glasses was.
Yeah.
But after Kind of Blue, they knew.
Yeah.
And so
why isn't an accountant sitting at the piano?
Yeah, exactly. With his hair combed back with Brill.
Yeah, I love it.
Little
and and I've mentioned it on the channel before, but for anyone that really wants to get into Evans, there's a great 6 CD box set. It's called 12 Classic Albums, which covers 1956 through 62.
I have it. Yeah.
and it includes this album, and it's a great intro. You delve yourself into those 12 albums. It's wonderfully diverse, but all within that particular year span that I love.
Right.
Yeah.
He developed so quickly that, you're thinking 56 to 62, that's not that big a time frame. But in terms of Bill Evans's development as a musician,
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
that's light years,
yeah,
those 6 or 7 years.
yeah.
I
It's a
would say that's
parallel.
pretty analogous to like Beatles from 62 to
Exactly.
66. It's like, how can this even be the
That's what I
same
said. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
band? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good comparison. Yeah.
yeah,
The great wake-up call with the Beatles is always to say, to play some classic and to say, yeah, Paul was 26 when he did.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
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 What
No,
what were you
exactly.
doing when you were 26?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm not even gonna go there, but yeah. But no, I know what you're saying. You're right.
Okay,
Cool.
so going back to the modern here, we have an album from at number 3 from 1998, and this is another one of those. What album do I pick from this incredibly influential, accomplished piano trio? But this is called Songs: The Art of the Trio, Volume 3 by Brad Mehldau and his longtime trio of Larry Grenadier on bass and George Rossi on the drums. And there are a bunch of albums before this with this group and a whole bunch after it too. And then Brad eventually gets into almost more compositionally, almost into Matheny territory after
Yeah,
he starts cooking up these longer suites of music that are all or mostly original. But this is just unbelievable piano trio stuff. And my recommendation off that record is Brad's version of Radiohead's Exit Music, which, I'm a huge OK Computer guy and Radiohead guy in general. And part of what I admire about Brad Mehldau, we'll get into his ridiculous alien superpower independence of hands in a minute. But I love the fact that part of his mission has been to draw into the jazz repertoire all this music from the 80s and 90s and aughts that on the face of it doesn't sound like jazz or doesn't even seem jazz related. He just did this new record where it's all Elliott Smith song.
Yeah.
And this is not the only Radiohead song he's recorded either. But and he's done Joni Mitchell and he's done Lennon McCartney and he's
Rush.
yeah,
Yes.
Rush, exactly. So he's insisting if you're drawing a line between standards and modern pop music, or you're drawing a line between jazz repertoire and pop repertoire or rock repertoire, you're doing the wrong thing. You're thinking about it the wrong way. It's sort of like what Leonard Bernstein said about serious music and popular music. We can kind of, at this point, do away with that now. Once you have composers on the level of George Gershwin and Duke Ellington working in popular music, you can pretty much forget about what's serious and what's not serious. And I think that's sort of, although I've never heard Mehldau actually talk about that, I think that it's implicit in what he's recorded, that he's telling you these are worthy pieces of music. This is not grunge, this is not folk, this is not sort of singer-songwriter or whatever. Forget about what tag it would be under in a record store. This is worthy music that not only in and of itself, but it's also it has the kind of bones that a trio or a jazz group can really get around and do something with. And certainly the minute I heard Radiohead, I thought, well, it may not be the first thing you notice. Like you maybe notice Johnny Greenwood's guitar treatments or Tom's voice or whatever. But to me, their harmonic concept just leapt out at me right away. It was sort of like this Beatles slash Pink Floyd derived thing that they had taken 5 paces past that,
Mhm.
and just gotten into some really amazing weird areas. And this tune, Exit Music for a Film, is right up there with their most zany, beautiful, surprising, scary, yet somehow inevitable progressions. And I'm sure that's a lot of what appealed to Meldau about it. And just before I open the floor, I just want to say that one of the most distinctive things about Meldau is technique derived. Not that technique in and of itself is necessarily even important or the reason that you would get into a piece of music, but his classical chops are on the level of a concert pianist, and his left and right hand independence is legendary. I mean, he's absolutely as fluid with either hand, and he's handing off the harmonic chords to the right hand sometimes, and the left hand is moving, or vice versa. There's even a version of Blackbird, which is another him taking popular repertoire and doing something with it, where he's hitting a pedal. It's probably a G because the song's in G, sort of in the middle of the keyboard, and everything else that he's playing fans out to the left and the right of that throughout that arrangement, but there's this kind of chime of a G. It really sounds like somebody with 3 hands is playing, but because he's got that technique, things like that seem inevitable to him. It doesn't seem like a magic trick or some stunt that he's pulling. It's just, I can do this, so why wouldn't I do this? He's got another, he did a whole Beatles record.
Yep, Your Mother Should Know.
Yeah, Your Mother Should Know, his version of that song. Again, which that song had, was incredible to begin with, but had really cool harmonic bones. So you can see where a piano player would go, oh yeah, I'm doing that one.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it seems like maybe it's not in the Beatles canon in the way that a Let It Be or Hey Jude or Strawberry Fields would be. But I can picture the young Brad Meldau hearing his friends or his older siblings' copy of Magical Mystery Tour and going,
Yeah.
That
It takes it out of granny song territory.
right, granny,
that
damn granny music.
That's right.
Oh my God, that damn phrase, granny music. Okay, all right.
Well, it so happens I kind of agree with John about Maxwell Silverhammer, but it's a discussion for another day. But anyway, if you're going to start somewhere with the Brad Meldau Trio, Art of the Trio Volume 3, highly recommended. And if you want to, take the shortcut, start with Exit Music, and you really get a sort of crash course in what that trio is all about.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Meldau is amazing. I've had the opportunity to see him live a couple of times just over the last 12 months, and both experiences have just been absolutely astounding. I think he's escalated into the do not miss category when he comes around.
Absolutely, yeah. And when you see him live, you almost think, wow, like, why didn't you do that on the record? As great as the records are, there's something about him live just unspooling all this greatness, it's unbelievable. I saw him in Matheny when they did that first record together. I was in the front row in Toronto, my son and I, just, like about 8 feet from the two of them. That was great. But I've seen his trio a couple of times too. And man, I agree. He's cancel your plans, go to the Brad Meldau show.
Well,
Yeah.
he's a new artist for me, like that I discovered with this list. So I will be checking out some more albums.
Yeah, one way to get to know him a little bit is there's a great interview that Rick Beato did with him.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe how long ago, Jim? Maybe 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah. Fairly
Something like
recent.
that. But yeah, they have a great old conversation, and Meldau, who can visually look a little serious.
Hmm.
It's not at all that way in that interview, and it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
Don, I like what you said at the beginning of this about technique. Um, I've known a lot of musicians that, you know, from one gamut of being able to really nail down technique to others that poo-poo the idea and think, oh no, I want to feel free to do whatever. Mildau is a good example of the more tools you have in your toolbox,
Right.
it frees you up rather than um, confines you to any particular thing. One of my earliest lessons as a musician was um, I didn't like sitting in a classroom, learning the circle of fifths and all the theory stuff. But what I learned very quickly is once you learn the rules, then you can do whatever you want to do.
Right.
But that knowledge and just having that as a musician, having that so many tools in your toolbox that every day is different.
Right. And Meldau is not busting out this classical stuff because he's trying to impress you. He's just doing it
No,
because, like you said, it's in his bag of tricks.
it allows himself and that whole thing about hand independence um, uh, is not to be taken lightly. And that's one reason why I've always been better at guitar and singing than at piano because I don't have that strong independence of hands. And my piano teacher learned that very quickly. Playing Mozart and stuff like that. It's like, no, let's go to Copeland
Yeah,
instead. Yeah,
this might not be your thing, Ken.
no, unfortunately, but there it is.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, oh, what did you say? Oh, yeah, just it's important to know the rules, and then you can forget them.
Yeah,
First, draw me a pony, and then you can do abstract art.
Yeah.
My first year arranging class at Berkeley, we studied all the kind of standard, drop two and voicing within an octave and all this kind of arranging stuff early that year. And then we came back after it was either reading week or Thanksgiving or something. And the first thing the teacher said was, okay, all that shit we did the first couple of months, forget that.
yeah.
You know,
That's the way graduate school
it's good,
was. Yeah.
have it in your pocket, but just, untether yourself from that and just forget it.
And here we go. Yeah, I get that.
Cool.
Just one more Meldau comment before we move on. There's a couple of albums that he released, both of which are called After Bach, which is, him doing, these small sections of Bach tunes, and then he will do an improvisation from that. And it's just this beautifully seamless, um, I don't know, amalgam or gumbo of something between jazz and classical. That's just breathtaking stuff. And for folks who, are either classical guys and want to understand a little bit more what makes the jazz idiom so specific and special, those are two albums I think are great introductions for that. And then likewise, if you're a jazzer and you don't know the first thing about classical, well, as Pat Metheny says, there's Bach and everything else.
And everything else. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought those up because those are fantastic. And it's never been clear to me whether he was grabbing a section of Bach and then he wrote something
Mm-hmm.
go with that, or wrote the bones of something and he's playing it, or whether he's just fully Amadeus style extemporaneous
Sure.
improvisation on
Hmm.
those themes. But whichever it is, they're fantastic. And again, it's part of his sort of life's mission to erase those dotted lines between styles of music or
Sure.
levels of seriousness of music or whatever, you know.
Yep. There is only music.
Right. I don't know whether it was Duke Ellington, but somebody, maybe it was Miles. Somebody said there's only two kinds of music, good and bad, right?
I think it was Miles. I think he said, I think I remember something about that.
Casey said it like this. Yeah.
With MF dropped in.
Yeah.
Okay, we're down to the final two, and I've actually brought visual aids.
Ooh.
Well, there you
Ah.
go.
I got to put it in front of your face,
Perfect.
Don.
Yeah, they're a little fuzzy.
There we go. Montreux 2.
Montreux 2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is controversial in itself, picking a Bill Evans album that isn't with the classic trio as my number two. But again, this is 1970, the same year as the Ahmad Jamal record. And it's certainly a time in the history of jazz where the earth was shifting beneath everybody's feet.
Sure.
And you had this kind of whole new stream of music with, you know, the current Miles Davis group at that point, Weather Report, Return to Forever, Larry Coryell. I mean, all kinds of stuff was happening then that was kind of electric and adventurous and rock or R&B infused. But this set of the newer, at the time, Bill Evans trio at the Montreux Jazz Festival is just a classic. And again, I have to cop to the fact that it's one of those records that I don't even remember the first time I heard it, because it was around when I was a kid. I guess it came out when I was single digits. And so my dad probably bought it when it came out, and it was just kind of spinning in the house. And it's where I learned a whole bunch of Bill Evans songs. I didn't know which ones were his and which ones were standards. Alfie's, there's a great version of Alfie on this record, which I almost picked as my key track. But it's Bill Evans, Eddie Gomez, and the drummer Marty Morell, who was with him a long time and I saw a lot of Marty Morell up here in Toronto, because I'm not sure if he married a Canadian or something, but he was Toronto based kind of during these years. And it's a beautiful live recording. The piano's not in perfect tune, which tends to be the case with records recorded at jazz festivals. Although the piano's not in very good tune on that Ahmad Jamal record either, and that's a studio album, so there's no excuse. But in terms of getting a nice helping of Bill Evans' original compositions, very early, this one of his beautiful waltzes is the one that I'm picking as the key track. Part of the reason for that is you hear Bill Evans kind of skate into it from a little informal rubato intro that he's playing, and he starts playing the tune, and you go, oh yeah, that's very early. But once at the end of the first statement of the song, he establishes a little time for the jazz waltz feel, and then Eddie Gomez comes in, and it's almost like that Scott LaFaro thing where he's playing the head in time, but is there a bass solo going on at the same time? I mean, it's that upfront and free and kind of untethered from the melody in a good way. You really feel Gomez as a very distinctive voice in the idiom, and someone who's actually changing the way the upright bass is kind of being played and being recorded and microphoned, these days. What else to say about this? Well, the beginning of this track, you hear the Swiss host of the event speaking French, introducing the band en français and
Batterie.
Il y a la batterie, et le bassiste Eddie Gomez et le pianiste Bill Evans.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
to me, that's part of the song, that whole intro thing, because I always heard that. But the same group had done. I'm not even sure whether it was recorded the same year, but there's a Montreux album. That's why this one's called Montreux 2,
Hmm.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
which is
So,
right up right up there. It's sort of flip a coin which one you would pick to represent those recordings. And then Bill Evans later in his life had another group with a different rhythm section and a trumpet player, which was fantastic. That was sort of into the mid to late 70s, near the end of his life, um, which is also worth looking into. And, Bill Evans is one of those discographies that is dozens and dozens of great albums deep, and it's sort of hard to know where to start. But if I had to pick one, it's this one.
What really leaps out to me about Montreux 2 is just how, or Montreux, excuse me, is how different sounding it is than Sunday at the Village Vanguard. Whereas, the Vanguard records have more of, kind of this peaceful chamber kind of interplay with everyone. This is just blistering. I mean,
Yes.
Evans is just completely unleashed in what's happening with his digits, as you said before. It's phenomenal to hear him play that aggressively and but still beautifully and fluidly.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I mean, if you just jump cut from Waltz for Debbie and conversations with myself, that era of Bill Evans to this, it's like, wow, what happened to Bill? He never has a third cup of coffee, you know. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, I would recommend this whole album. It was really hard to even sort of point my finger at one song and say start with this, because it's just a like any classic trio album. You enter this room and there are these three personalities in it, and by the end of 30 or 40 minutes you really are starting to understand the dynamic and the three brains and hearts that are making the music. It doesn't take long. Oh, are we out of comments? Is it?
It's kind of staggering to me, frankly.
Well, again, this is new territory for me, so I like what I'm hearing, and I want to hear more. So I'm gonna dive into
I wonder if I can hold this
his
album
catalog.
and have it actually show up in the picture.
Mm,
Somewhat, yeah, yeah. Stop
Anyway,
there.
I'm so proud of my mint condition Oscar Peterson Plays the Cole Porter Songbook
Yeah.
LP that I have here. Um, this is Peterson, again from 1959, same year as that Night Train record, same edition of his classic trio. But to me, these are the years where um, Oscar, because he had these insane chops, superpowers, really. At times in later recordings, is kind of indulging that, and it can get a little thick and busy, and kind of chopsy for its own sake, for lack of a better term.
mhm.
But I feel like the rigors of making records for Verve, which they were at the time, and doing these songbook albums kind of gave Oscar enough of a kind of mold to pour everything into, that they're nice short arrangements, and they're very respectful of the melodies. And although he rips at times on this record, there's also times where, like, there's a version of obviously Cole Porter's got 50 songs that he'd want to record, but Every Time We Say Goodbye, which is maybe his prettiest ballad, Oscar's just, he's done some beautiful harmonizing of that song, but he's just stating it in this beautiful, pure kind of way. the my recommended track, again, by the way, this is Ray Brown on bass, Ed Thigpen on drums, the classic OP3, as we call them here in Canada. Um, and I picked Love for Sale, which I'm not even sure that a lot of people would recognize the version of Love for Sale on this album as, sort of if they'd heard Doris Day or somebody do a vocal version of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Oscar took it as his excuse to, okay, well, this track is going to be the bluesy track on the record. And you hear this, the reason I picked it is it's kind of the two worlds of Oscar Peterson happening at the same time. So it's beautiful, clean swing, and they're playing a standard, but it's also this greasy, wrong side of the tracks, boogie woogie, bluesy kind of approach. And there, at least, if you're lucky in a song, there's one of those moments that makes you want to leap out of your chair. I have about 6 in this short version of this tune. If I could point to one, I think it's coming up to the 2-minute mark. I think it was the 2-minute mark. It's right after he does this big press roll with both hands over about 3 or 4 chord changes coming into the top of another section. And the band, when he lets go of that roll and they just start grooving, he's going bling, 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 bling with the right hand. It's just one of those groove moments that, I can just picture them in the studio listening to the playback and going,
Yep.
ah, this is the take.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's just so much intelligent, beautiful trio arranging going on. Every solo is a gem. The recording is phenomenal, even during a period where this group was being very nicely recorded. The everything is so present. The drum kit is so present. You can feel the strings. You can feel the finger on the strings of the bass. And the piano is, beautifully tuned up. Sounds like they had the piano tuner hanging around for the day and tweaking it between takes. It's got this very pure sound. And so if someone came to Earth from another planet and wanted to know what trio jazz was, I would start with Oscar Peterson Plays the Cole Porter Songbook, 1959, Verve Records, mic drop.
Wow.
It's a hell of a mic drop. Yeah, no, again, like I've said before, this is new territory for me, but I'm liking what I'm hearing, and I want to hear more. So, thank you for that. Anyone else have any more comments or opinions or questions?
It's just such a rich vein to tap into, this whole jazz trio world. There's, I'm sure it was not a easy task to sort of just pick 10, but like we said at the outset about 3 days ago when we started, there's so many different variations that, folks can take on this thing.
Yeah.
We might have to try to do a volume 2 at some point, and maybe we can throw in our things that are like, yeah, this is we think this is pretty neat too. I know I recommended something to you, Don, which you hadn't heard before, which was a standard, piano-based drums trio covering King Crimson.
Yeah.
And that's A, it's nuts, and B, it actually works. There's some really great swinging on there.
Covering King Crimson. Who the
as a
hell's
jazz
that?
day.
Yeah.
Who was that? Sorry.
Ian Wallace on drums, Jody Nerone on either bass or piano, and I can't remember the
Okay.
third guy, but the band was the Crimson Jazz Trio, and that was their mission, was to interpret the Crimson Songbook in jazz form. And until you've heard the solo sections of Schizoid Man just swinging like mad, and then even Three of a Perfect Pair is just dang, it's amazing stuff.
Right. Well, again, good music is good music, and it's nice to see, people just breaking down or maybe not even giving a damn about those, what people perceive as lines between different styles.
Yeah.
That's
The
that's
thing
true.
about everything on the list, I think I picked is they all point to other records. I mean,
Hmm.
like for example, the Oscar Peterson Trio during that period from mid '50s to mid '60s did a whole series of these plays the so and so songbook. So there's a Duke Ellington one. There's a Gershwin one. All the sort of usual suspects from the American Songbook. They would do these 10 or 12 song dates where they would, pick all the
Hmm.
chants from a certain songwriter or songwriting team. There's a Rogers and Hart one. So they're all worthy of investigation too.
Yeah. It worked for Ella. Why not for Oscar?
Right. Well, I think that might have been the inspiration because they were on the same label at the time,
Yep.
and probably Norman Granz said, this is a fun kind of. It's fun to have this little organizing principle,
Sure.
and then if someone digs one of them, then they're going to want the whole series.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, again, this was a wonderful exercise. And, thank you for bringing this list to our attention and to people watching. I've said before, once you think you know everything there is to know about music, there's always something new, right, to find out and discover. Um, and again, I want to thank Don, Ken, and Jim for joining me on this wonderful adventure. And special thanks to Don for bringing us this wonderful list. So,
Absolutely.
again, everyone, please check out these albums. You can stream them on YouTube if you want to check them out. And put your comments down below. And we will be back with more episodes on the Music Den. Again, please look after yourselves and one another. Click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell again. Keep yourselves on top of any new content we've got coming up. We've got more shows that we're working on, and we're going to bring them to you as soon as we can. So for the gang of four here, I'm Armando Venditti signing off. We'll see you soon on the Music Den. Bye for now.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.